Welcome back to Pace Immigration, paceimmigration.com, talking with immigration lawyer Michael O'Rourke. Michael, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good, Sean. How are you?
Busy,
Yeah.
I think. And I think you're busy too, with all the changes that are going on with immigration law in the United States. Today, we're going to talk about deportation concerns, illegal entry versus overstay. The reason I'm asking you this question is because I'm seeing it online all the time, whether it's on the YouTube channel, Reddit, Twitter, Blue Sky, you name it, all the different, Facebook still exists. It's out there too, with all of these questions. And what I'm seeing a lot of is this question right here. Does the U.S. Draw a distinction between those who enter the country illegally? In other words, they didn't go through processing. They didn't come over. You get to the airport and you get a stamp, or you get at least put through the system or something. They just walked over, say, or snuck in, or whatever they did. Is there a difference between that and people who enter legally? They go about it, and then they just overstay their visa and decide to stay for a number of months or years. Does the U.S. draw a distinction between that?
Well, up until the Trump administration's press conference literally this afternoon, yes, there is a distinction in American law between those who have entered the country without inspection. Entry without inspection is the proper way to describe it, versus those who have had status but then overstayed. And I'll discuss that, but as of the date that we're filming this, which is January 29, 2025, the Trump administration's new White House spokesperson has now stated that it is the administration's policy that overstays are criminal and illegal immigrants.
Right.
But this is not the case in the law. In the law, those who enter without inspection, that is one class of federal crime, 8 U.S.C. 1325 for the initial entry. And then if somebody leaves or is deported or removed from the U.S., then 1326 kicks in, and that's an additional federal crime. However, overstays are civil violations of U.S. immigration law.
Okay, so let's take the first one first, the one that we've got here. And you're right. We say enter the country legally. These are the things I see in the search terms and things like that, but there's going to be different parlance on the books, like you entered without inspection, things of that nature. We've got number one here, entered the country illegally, but you want to remain in the United States, or you want to leave and come back to the United States. We've talked about this before. This is exceedingly difficult, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, and a little factoid that's interesting, 65% of federal criminal cases have been for people who have entered without inspection, and it's the immigration system ramping up to remove them from the country. 65%. So they have been a deportation priority for a number of years, and with the new administration, it seems like that is only going to increase. So remaining in the U.S. may be difficult. Coming back to the U.S. once you have entered without inspection is exceedingly difficult, if not impossible.
Right. So let's talk about the process anyway. All right.
Okay.
So you're in the United States. You didn't go through inspection. You've been caught by ICE or what have you, and you're deported or you're removed from the United States. When you get home, if you do go home, do you file a certain thing? Do you ask for a waiver? How does it work?
So if you're trying to do it legally, what you would do is apply, well, if you're a Canadian or a Bermudian, you would apply for an entry waiver, and then you would once that is approved, then you could come back in, because Canadians and Bermudians are visa free. If you were anywhere else in the world, you would apply for a U.S. visa, and then it would be the consular officer's discretion whether they will refer your case for a waiver to come back into the U.S. This is in a non-immigrant context. Immigrant context, say you're married to a U.S. citizen, that is a slightly different process, but at one point you're going to have to get a waiver to come back, and that can be difficult.
Now, this is the one I want to underline because I'm seeing this a lot. With this, what we're looking at right here, if you did not go through inspection and you're forced to leave the country and try and come back, the point being you have to leave the country. There is no way to adjust status. If you've come in like this, is there a way to adjust status while you're still in the United States?
Generally, no. So you might be able to find some sort of status like TPS, temporary protected status, if you're from a country that has a TPS designation, and then you get permission to leave and come back, then you could be inspected and admitted, and then potentially adjust status, say through marriage or something. But that's very complex.
Okay.
If you are just trying to come back because you want to come back, I don't know if you're going to be able to get that waiver.
So you've got people out there that are saying, look, I'm married. I've got 2 kids. I've been in the United States for nigh on 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I came in without inspection. They've told me I have to leave. Maybe they've been detained and they're being told that they have to leave. There's really no wiggle room here. You're making it sound like, look, this is just the way it is right now, is that you're going to have to leave the United States.
Yeah. So under the previous administration, had been some withholding of removal for family-based grounds like that. I think that's out the window now. And really, we're only a couple weeks into the new administration. We don't know everything that is planned, but I'm not very optimistic that somebody who has children, who has a U.S. spouse, will be able to stay.
Right. One more for you. And we never advise people to lie or commit a crime or anything like that, of course, but I just wanted to throw this out there while I think of it. If you came in without inspection, I mean, who's to say? I mean, if you're not, if you just leave, I mean, are all bets off? Like they might know you were there, they might not. You know what I'm saying?
Hard to say. Yeah, it's really hard to say. And I could imagine so many different factual scenarios. Maybe you've popped up, maybe not. When you do make a U.S. visa application, say you came in and then you left and managed to stay under the radar, you have to list your addresses and employment and things like that. So if there are gaps, that's going to raise a question as well.
Right. Especially if they find out maybe you've got a spouse there or some children.
That's
Obviously, you were probably there at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you reproduce if you were never here?
Right. While I've got you on the subject, by the way, I had an email and I wasn't even sure, but it sounded weird. Someone talked about a virtual wedding, like they could have a virtual wedding and now they're married. Like, does that work?
It does in some jurisdictions. It started more and more during the COVID pandemic.
Okay.
That is again, it depends. If it was allowable, say, I think Utah did it. Utah is always at the forefront of interesting marital arrangements. But I think Utah had done it. And those marriages are valid because the state had endorsed it. Canada will recognize that sometimes as well. It's again a highly factual exercise. You can't say broad brush, oh, this is going to be allowed everywhere all the time.
Okay. While it was on my mind. So if you're thinking about a virtual wedding and things to do with immigration, contact Michael and he can look at your case on a case-by-case basis.
Immigration lawyer and wedding planner, obviously.
That's right. Number 2, let's get down to the overstay stuff. Although today's announcement, maybe this makes it a little bit moot, but I'm going to hit you with it anyway. Number 2. So you entered the country legally. And, I spent a little bit of time in Los Angeles, and I did know a number of people that were down there that entered the country legally, and then they stayed around and decided they thought they might want to be an actor or something. And then you learned they'd been in the country for 2 years, and they didn't really have the proper paperwork for that. So maybe there's some people like that and others. But you entered the country legally, but then you overstayed your visa for one way or another, and now you want to stay in the U.S. Can you adjust status from inside the United States in that case because you came through inspection? Or is it again, see you later?
So you used to be able to, if you were an American citizen, you used to be able to adjust status. There was a provisional waiver that was granted where you didn't have to leave the U.S. to adjust status, and you could become a permanent resident. I believe
Oh, I'm
that
sorry.
has,
Just wanted to back. You said American citizen. We're talking about
yeah, if you had
Yeah,
married an American citizen.
married. I'm sorry, Michael. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so
How
if you had,
how could I question you about the marriage stuff after what we just talked about? Go
as a
ahead.
wedding planner, Sean, I know these things.
All right.
So, no, if you had married an American citizen, you were allowed to basically stay in the US and adjust. That was a variation from earlier policy where you had to leave and get a waiver and get an immigrant visa outside, and then hopefully take your chances, get the visa, come back. Uh, I think we're back to those days now where you're going to have to leave. There's going to have to be a waiver, and it's called a 601 waiver. And the U.S. citizen is going to have to show that they have extraordinary hardship for you not being able to come and live with them in the U.S. But just a quick question, or a quick comment about overstays. So if you overstay less than 180 days, then generally you're in the free and clear. You might have to explain yourself, but you are not inadmissible. Once you spend 180 days up to 364 days, then you have accrued this 3-year bar. This is under the IRA era laws from the 90s. You've accrued a 3-year bar, so when you leave, that bar attaches to you. If you stay more than a year, you are now barred 10 years on reentry. Now, there are some exceptions and there's some ways to serve out the bars within the US, but in general, an overstay of more than 180 days is going to get you into very hot water. There's a concept called unlawful presence, and that accrues the minute you are out of status. Either your visa has expired or your time permitted on your I-94 record has expired, and you are now out of status.
We've talked about this before. I think one of the first conversations we ever had together, you highlighted status. You were like, it's all about status. If you, no matter what the status is, as long as you can remain in some kind of proper status, you're going to be okay. But once you're out of that, they take a really dim view.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and statuses, there are so many different documents in the U.S. immigration universe that could control the time in the country. Like you might have a petition approval, you might have a passport stamp, you might have, or you are going to have an I-94 record attached to your passport. That is the one thing that trumps them all, is the I-94. And if you have gone beyond that date, then you are out of status.
Okay. And that marriage thing is big because I'm seeing that online a lot. That a lot of people are saying, hey, I overstayed, got married, da 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 da, and everyone is responding to that. Or I'm thinking 99% of the people I'm seeing responding to that online with their comments, some of them more qualified than others, are saying, oh, well, then you're fine because you can stay inside the United States and adjust status as long as you're married to a U.S. citizen. And now you're saying that's not so good after all.
No, Sean, they're not wedding planners like me. But no,
Yeah.
it is not a silver bullet. It's not gonna necessarily work in all cases. It might work in some cases, but again, it's highly factual and it depends on the facts.
Okay. Michael O'Rourke, thanks for that. Deportation concerns illegal entry versus overstay. I mean, contact you, right? I mean, if people are in this kind of situation, it is, like you say, it does depend. So there could be some things that you can do for them.
Yeah, possibly, but there might not either. And this is a very fast developing situation. We don't know what's going to happen in the next day or week or year. So what you're seeing on the internet now, what people are talking about, might be based on old information.
Right. Okay, Michael O'Rourke, M.O'Rourke at pacelawfirm.com. Thanks, Michael. We'll be talking to you, I think, sooner rather than later. Have a good one.
Probably. Thanks, Sean. Take
Bye-bye.
care.